I remember being very intrigued by it. I was like, oh wow, Bitcoin. And of course, before seeing the actual ATM machine, I'd actually read about it, and it brought me back to my days of writing that paper about electronic money. And I got really intrigued, and I remember reading the instructions on the machine. It looked just like an ATM machine. You can feed it money, and it'll send you Bitcoin. So I took out my phone, I went to the app store, and I searched for Bitcoin wallet. So I downloaded whatever I found, and then I fed a few $100s into the machine, and then eventually I had to tap on receive, and then put it at where they were scanning the QR code on the app on my phone. So then I remember, okay, after I had done that transaction, I was like, oh wow, I was really excited, but I kept refreshing, and the Bitcoin had not landed in my wallet yet, or I could not see it. And I was like, oh no, I just put in like a few $100s. And I remember I was rushing to catch the train. So, and this was Melbourne Central. So I remember going down the stairs and just as I got to the platform, there was an alert on my phone. The Bitcoin had actually landed. And I still remember to this day, I was very excited when I got the Bitcoin. Again, similarly, and you'll hear very similar stories to those who have been very early in Bitcoin. I was more eager to spend it than I was to hodl or keep it. So the first thing I did was Google for where to spend Bitcoin. And I still remember there was a website or an app that kind of like Google Maps, and it will show, it detects your location, and it tells you where the closest places are that would accept Bitcoin. So I found this really nice sandwich place in Melbourne, actually in Melbourne CBD. It was quite near the RMIT campus in town, in the city. So I remember going there quite often and spending my Bitcoin. Those are, let me just say, have been very expensive sandwiches. But I still remember my first payment. I was very excited. They had an iPad or a tablet, and when I said, oh, can I pay with Bitcoin? They're like, yeah, sure. They whipped it out, and then they showed me this QR code. So then I whipped out my Bitcoin wallet app, and I scanned the code, and I happily paid for it. And I knew I paid extra because there were transaction fees involved. But I just remember being ecstatic. I was like, wow, like, so this is the future. I'm in the future. Back then, this was like 2013, yeah. And from then on, it was like, wow. And since then, you know, obviously I've been in it, but the Bitcoin that I did buy back then in 2013, that's obviously all gone. And you know, I left it for a while, and then I think I received this phone call from Alvin. I was still in Melbourne. He was here in KL, and he says, hey, this Bitcoin thing seems to be taking off again. You should have a look. And I did, and we've never looked back since.
So thanks to the journalist.
Okay, so I mean, guys, cryptocurrency it is today is totally different from when you guys started to discover, right? I mean, you guys told me a story about how difficult it was to also try to get or to buy cryptocurrencies with the fiat money we have today. Maybe you want to experience, like, how do you buy crypto at the time?
Oh, I remember, you know, when we started our courses, we had to. There were no exchanges that were. There were no exchanges or infrastructure, right, where we could get ringgit. So I remember we had to use a website called Remitano, right, which works as a custodian, and you send, you know, your ringgit to some random person, and then they will send a Bitcoin onto a platform, and then once they both match, and you have like a 15-minute window to do that transaction. That you know, in those days, that was, you know, how we did it. Because this was like pre-Luno and pre any exchange in Malaysia back then, right? And interestingly, I you know, I think you told me, right? I think there was the first Bitcoin ATM in Malaysia was actually in Ipoh.
Ipoh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Wow. So, is it risky? I mean, you like when you send your money there, you expect to really get it back, or they give you the coins actually?
You know, you have to hold your breath for 15 minutes.
So what happens after 15 minutes if let's say they don't give you that coin?
So yeah, okay. So it works like this, right? So well, then you lose your money, like essentially. If it disappears, that's it, right? Yeah. You know, like what Ben said. Essentially, it's a P2P. But there was a like an escrow service in between. That was those days. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I just want to go to your earlier point earlier because when I knew you guys, right, and especially Alvin, you were value investors, value investing stocks. So you find value in whatever that you're investing. So like for crypto, that time when you were searching, also you were searching for that value. Maybe you want to share with us, right? What value do you find in Bitcoin?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, I'll take this. So getting into Bitcoin, it still does not go against the philosophy of being a value investor. So what is being a value investor? A value investor is basically someone who buys something in a discount. I think a lot of you ladies out there who are viewing right now, a lot of you are value investors, right? When you go shopping to buy shoes or a handbag, and you hit the first store, you're not gonna buy the first one. You ask for the price, you'll find out, you look at the quality, then you walk to the next store, and then next thing you know, you've gone through the entire shopping center's shops to shop for the shoes or the handbag, and then you will know which one has the best value, the best deal around, and that's most likely where you will get it. So being a value investor is effectively buying something below its value. So Bitcoin's value, where does it come from? I guess the short answer is it's limited supply. There will only be so many Bitcoin ever produced. So if everyone who is on the internet or on the planet decides that they will get onto Bitcoin, then there will be very few to go around. And effectively, that's what you're seeing right now. In fact, right now as we're speaking, Bitcoin is very close or at its all-time high. It's past 93,000 something. So it's effectively it's scarcity, it's limited supply gives it value. And if enough, and if you go back to the very basic concept of supply and demand, if there's higher demand than there is supply, then obviously the price of that commodity or whatever that item is goes up. So the short supply is that it has limited supply. Then you're like, yeah, but I cannot feel it, I cannot touch it, it's not real, it's not it's not tangible, I cannot live in it, I cannot drive it. Why does it give me supply? Why does it still have value? I guess if you really look at Bitcoin for what it is, there are multiple lens and views on which you can analyze it from. You might look at Bitcoin as a network, right? So a network has what we call network value. So what's network value? If you were the only person who has a handphone on the Maxis network, there wouldn't be much value, right? But then if another person gets a handphone and they also go onto the Maxis network, for example, then you can call each other. That's great. But as more people onboard this network, then the value increases, just like the internet. Now, I got onto the internet when in the early 1993, 1994. So this was still very early days. And back then, not many people had an email address. Hotmail wasn't even invented yet. And so, was there any value in having an email address back then? Yeah, there was some value because there were still some people who had email addresses, so we could still communicate with and we could still email each other. But then today, like if you look at it today, you have how many of you do not have a smartphone, right? Some of you are probably dialing in from your smartphone, right? So obviously the email is old tech now, right? But it was the killer app back then. And so as more people onboard a network, there is network value, and value creation happens. So Bitcoin, one way to view it is that it's a network, and more people are jumping onto this network. It's just like back in the early 90s, not that many people were on the internet, but now very few people are not on the internet. So the world has 8 billion people, 5.5 billion people have access to the internet. But less than 100 million people actually have Bitcoin, or estimated. So what if we jump from 100 million to 200 million, or 200 million to 300, 400, 500 million people who have access to Bitcoin? So they jump onto the network. So what happens then? It possibly creates value, right? As more people want a scarce asset. So that's one way to view it. There are many other ways to view it.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I just want to ask point this to Alvin, because do you see, because you talk about value of crypto, right? Like what Andrew explained, but do you see any parallels between how you value stocks with Bitcoin per se, or is it a different way of valuing Bitcoin?
Yeah, if you read the white paper for Bitcoin, we know for a fact, if you read the white paper, there are a lot of references to we decided to do this, we decided to do that. So Satoshi is not, or Satoshi Nakamoto, or his pseudonym, we know now it's not one person, it was several people. And for Satoshi's, that team Satoshi, to create this, they had actually very deep understanding of a lot of I would say they had a very deep understanding of strong principles of different subject matters, right? So one of them is obviously computer networks. They understood it. They understood cryptography. They understood economics, demand and supply. They understood game theory, and they understood policies. Right now, the world that we live in is a very centralized world, right? So it's different disciplines that came together to kind of create what Bitcoin is today, or what it has become. So if we draw references, in the very early days, I know when I first started talking about Bitcoin at ET with my colleagues, right, they really thought I went mad. They're like, I thought you were a value investor.
Yeah, that time Warren Buffett wasn't talking about, he doesn't believe in crypto, right?
Well, he calls it rat poison squared, right? And as a student of Buffett's principles of value investing, right? So I want to share. So value investing is actually very simple, right? Value is, the formula is quality over price, right? We're trying to find something of high quality that is cheap, right? So value investing essentially tries to buy $1 for 50 cents. That's what we do. So you can apply value investing to property, to stocks, to really any asset class. It does not restrict it to only stocks, right? Now, if we think of Bitcoin today, now Bitcoin is several things, right? To several people, right? It's not one thing. So it's almost multi-dimensional. You can't think of it as a single dimension. So when we look at stocks, this company does manufacturing. They only manufacture cups, for example. That's all they do. But Bitcoin is many, many things. So is it a store of value? It's proving that it is store of value, right? Like gold, it's a store of value, right? I can't explain it. Why do people think gold is so valuable? Or diamonds, for example. It's literally a rock from the ground, and we process it, and then you get gold, right? But when people dictate a value to it, then it becomes valuable, right? Or many people dictate a value to what Andrew talked about, network value. Now, so is it a store of value? Okay, so if you look at it from a very traditional standpoint, what does it cost for you to mine a Bitcoin today? So as a business, if you're a miner today, because the difficulty level has gone up, you've got to put in infrastructure and power and so forth. I heard the ballpark figure is 45 to 50,000 USD to mine a single Bitcoin today, right? So if you're a business, well, the selling price has to be higher than the cost of producing, right? That's one way of valuing it. If you look at Bitcoin as a payment network, two very famous payment networks that we all use every day, Visa, MasterCard, or third one, Swift, right? They transact in billions every single day. And Bitcoin as a payment network really allows you to securely transfer money from one person sitting here, say in Malaysia, and I could transfer it to someone in Hungary, for example, right? And how could I do it securely? 24/7 and the system doesn't go down. So I use Bitcoin as a network, as a payment system, right? So if you look at how much Visa or MasterCard or the Swift system is worth today, that's another form of value. It is a payment network, right? It's 5-10 years ago, I said, would anyone accept Bitcoin? People are like, nah, maybe USD better. Today, I can tell you, I don't know how many of you guys here today said that if I were to give you some Bitcoin today, would you accept it as of value, right? If anyone say no, then, see,
Nicholas,
thanks, right,
yes.
Nicholas? Lastly, right, so as a traditional business, so I look at it as a payment network. Is it a store of value? Yes, it is as well, right? Now, is it also a bank? Yeah, it's a bank to some people, right? If you are unbanked, you live in some rural area and you only got access to the internet. I don't know how many of you guys have had that beautiful experience of opening a bank account. They treat you like a criminal, Now, really, right? They ask you this, ask you that.
Money is not yours.
Yeah, right. And you putting money with them, right? Is it a bank? Yeah, it can be, right? Because why? You download an app, you have a wallet address. That's it. Your account is open, right? So what's the value of a bank, right? So if you kind of look at it from a traditional viewpoint, does it have value? Yeah, it has values from several dimensions, but it's just that sometimes we are so boxed into what we know or what we're used to, therefore we cannot accept what's coming, right? So for me, Bitcoin or crypto in general has solved a lot of the archaic problems like money transfer. It's already solved. The problem is already solved, right? Literally, you don't need money union, you don't need Swift, you actually don't need a bank, right? Today, as long as you have internet connection, you're good to go, and a phone. So is it a world's bank? Right? It could be, right? So what's the value of the world's bank, right? Just because it doesn't have a P&L and cash flow statement doesn't mean it has no value, right? So that's my view, right? And really, it's an adoption play at the end of the day. It is more and more people adopting it, gives it even more value, right? So like what Andrew mentioned, the network effect.
So you put all that into place, then there is some value, it doesn't. Okay, I think Sue have a very interesting question, because this is a question that I asked also earlier, right? Because we talk about internet money that time, digital currency where people just create and then people use it as a form to go and buy things and all that. So Sue is asking, is it really basically a virtual money? Because earlier also, like Sue, my understanding is, maybe Bitcoin is just another digital money or virtual money. So you want to care to explain?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think as echoing off what Alvin said earlier, Bitcoin can be different things to different people. So to some, it is money because in some parts of the world, the financial system or the banking infrastructure isn't set up so well. So you can use Bitcoin to transact value. Yeah, it is also right now one of the biggest narratives for Bitcoin is that it is also a store of value. Why is it a store of value? If you look at gold has been a store of value for mankind for a very, very long time, and it still is, right? Central banks around the world store Bitcoin. So, but what is an even more scarce commodity or asset than gold? Well, Bitcoin, because there's actually a finite value. Whereas if the price of gold jumped 10 times tomorrow, I'm sure some companies will figure out a more efficient way to mine gold and extract gold faster, right? So then the supply gets there's more supply dilution. But yes, it can be used as virtual currencies to transact value. So for example, Venezuela's pesos have been devaluing at a crazy rate. Or if you look at Turkey, the Turkish lira, that's also been going nuts. It's been dropping at a crazy rate. So instead of holding if you were living in either of those countries, instead of holding onto the local currency, you could swap it, right, for something like Bitcoin to try to maintain its value, to try to hold its value. For example, can you imagine if you spend the last 40, 50 years working really hard every day, saving every penny you earn, and then buying a dream home in either one of those countries, but then it didn't matter how much the value of that property would have risen, right? If the value of your currency drops 100 times, right? So if it drops, your asset is still worth a lot less than anything. So whereas if you had held on to something like Bitcoin, then you would have at least maintained that value, if not maybe even gained some. So it is both a store of value. It is also a virtual currency which allows you to transfer value across continents, and I think it's also it's a network, right? It's effectively a network. So it's many things to many people.
Yeah, so I think we were all, even including myself, we were all tied to the word cryptocurrency, right? So that's why everybody thought it's just another currency, but it's digital. And we all know crypto, right? But I think the currency doesn't really explain Bitcoin. In fact, did Satoshi Nakamoto name it as cryptocurrency, or someone else actually name it?
Actually, it was not. It
wasn't them, right?
He's actually I think he used the word electronic cash.
Oh,
Yeah. It was called electronic cash, not cryptocurrencies. Yeah.
Right.
You know, today I suppose a lot of our viewers here today have Touch and Go, right? Many you have Touch and Go, and you have Touch and Go. Is that virtual currency? What makes currency real anymore, right? And if you look at it historically, I think Bitcoin is more than a currency. Why? Because it's got a built-in feature of scarcity, therefore allowing to keep its store value. Currency itself has been proven to be a very poor store of value. Like what Andrew's saying, it actually erodes over time, right? Because the modern governments we know today literally print money out of nothing, right? So your ringgit is printed out of nothing, your US dollar is printed out of nothing, your yuan, your yen, your Australian dollar, your Sing dollar, it's all the same, right? So I think virtual or non-virtual is almost non-distinguishable, right? And it's everything is almost virtual today. The dollars in your bank account today essentially also has become virtual, right? But because of the ability to continue to print money, I think that's where its store of value as a feature has been quite poor, right? If you ask me, right? So today, I don't know how many of you guys still have paper money or what, or coins, right? Everything is virtual today, right?
Yeah. I don't have much cash in my wallet anymore right now, right? Everything is just using the handphone and just tap it in. Okay, Kim, I know you have a statement, the disagreement. Maybe you guys want to take a look at it and try to see whether whatever that Kim Tim Chu or Chu Kim Tim mentioned is something that is probably like that mentally they will have maybe like 10, 15, 20 years ago, but now it's probably different. Maybe you want to save that for later. But you were talking about safety, right? And I still remember that you guys talked to me that, you know what, transacting through the Bitcoin network or some of the cryptocurrency network is even safer than transferring your money through Visa or Master or through a bank.
Yeah, okay, so if we talk about, let's say, gold, like if I say, hey, I pay you in gold today, you would still say, hey, wait a minute. How do I know it's
Real or not?
real, right? Wouldn't you? I mean,
Yeah.
if I gave you gold today, here's 1 kilo gold, you have, right? So it's not very easily verifiable, right? But if you understand Bitcoin and you both have a wallet, literally, if someone sends it, you can actually check because it's transparent. It's on the blockchain, right? So I think in a way it's a lot easier, and also I can't send gold to someone super far away in the speed that I can do it with Bitcoin, right? Or any digital asset or crypto, for that matter.
I guess based off that gold example you talked about, I think none of us here are gold experts, so we won't be able to like rub it against something and then bite it or whatever to verify whether or not that gold, that piece of gold is real. But because the verification that the Bitcoin is real when you do transfer it, that's built into the system, right? So if you're receiving it in a wallet, then it's already verified that it is real. Obviously, a novice may not know the difference between Bitcoin, which is BTC, versus something else that pretends to be Bitcoin. They might call it BTC Gold or BTC something. That's not the real Bitcoin. The real Bitcoin is BTC. So obviously, it's baked in the system that it is real. I'd like to. Was it Kim? Kim had a question. Kim.
Yeah, I guess Kim, Chu Kim Tim, I think, was referring to the example that Erwin gave. It talks about value investing, the price over quality, and then you give an example on real estate or properties, if I'm not mistaken.
So I think.
Was it?
No, I think that was me.
I
talked about
the real estate one.
Yeah. If we can just see that question, it'd be really good.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So Kim says. So here's actually in that comment itself. It's interesting. So if you're in Cambodia, why are they not accepting the local currency? Why do they choose to accept a foreign currency? Do they not trust their own government's currency or their own country's currency? Do they not see value in it?
I think today, like we recently visited Cambodia as well, and they're like, no, USD, right?
Yeah.
And then they give you back change in the local currency, which like, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, Kim, thanks for the other example about Venezuela accepting again some other country's currency, right? So why accept another country's currency instead of your own country's currency? I guess that in itself explains it, right? Like, do the Venezuelans or do the Cambodians not see value in their own currency? Why choose the US dollar? Yeah.
And I don't think so. They want to accept Malaysian ringgit, right?
Yeah. Exactly. See, so here's so here's where the real powerful value is, right? It's the value of acceptability. I think there is true value in that, right? So more people will accept Sing dollar than say Malaysian ringgit, or I can't remember what the Venezuela local currency is, but yeah, they went through hyperinflation because they overprinted money, right? Same like Zimbabwe, they did the same thing, right? So I think acceptability. I talk about adoption play, right? Acceptability as a value can really not be underplayed, right? So if you think of how much Bitcoin got in terms of marketing value globally, like as a company, I don't think any company or very few companies can do that kind of marketing in the last 13 years. That you go to most corners around the world, they would have heard of Bitcoin, right? But I can guarantee they may not have heard of Equity Striker as a brand, right? Just to give you an example, right? So is there brand value in there, right? And they spend how much on marketing? Zero, right? So it is amazing, yeah.
And also, if you own property in Malaysia, obviously you'll be selling that property in the local currency and pricing it in the local currency, right? You won't be pricing it in US dollars. And tomorrow if I wanted to sell my house and I tried to sell it in US dollars, they'll probably give me the ringgit equivalent in US dollars, maybe. but it'll still be paid in the local currency. So I think I guess that in itself explains it.
Right. Yeah, I also had this experience when I was in Thailand. Don't ask me what I was there for, but when Thailand used to accept Malaysian ringgit, right, especially the southern part lah. Okay, so I was there and I was just jokingly, of course they don't accept Malaysian ringgit unless you pay a very premium lah. But when I asked them, hey, do you accept crypto? Do you accept Bitcoin? Immediately he took out his e-wallet. his wallet lah, right?
His wallet,
I said, wow, okay, yeah, they don't accept Malaysian ringgit, but crypto they may want to accept. Well, that's how it is lah, right? I think, like you said, right, there's no currency per se that is well promoted than any other currencies in the world, right?
And no government, there's no marketing budget.
Yeah.
But Kim, I just want to answer that question. I think just to rehash, Bitcoin is not an alternative to just US or gold. It is probably a combination of both. Plus, it's a payment network. Plus, it's a fully functional bank that operates 24/7 globally, right? So I think just to go a little bit deeper, I don't think it's anything the world has seen, basically, right? So remember I said about traditional where we kind of silo, oh, this is this or this like that. It's not, right? A car is not the same as a horse carriage. Even though it almost does the same thing, gets you from A to B, but it's different, right?
Yeah, so again, that word, right, cryptocurrency. Now, if you were to name it, right, what would you name it? Crypto what?
I don't think it's a currency, to be honest, because I think crypto has evolved to become, you have protocols like DeFi or smart contract platforms and things like that. So I think it's gone beyond being a currency. It's really, I think. I don't know. It's
It's
the next
like everything. It's like finance in one. Right?
Yeah, it's internet. We coined the word capital markets 2.0 which we think that's where the evolution of finance will be. Yeah.
Right. So Hasbi was asking a question because sometimes it's very difficult to explain what crypto is about. It's like, okay, let's say even Bitcoin lah, right? He was saying that how do you explain your wife or your spouse what is crypto?
How do you do it with your kids, right? You do a plan with your kids, right?
Yeah. I think you can think of it this way, right? What is crypto or what is food? Well, then next you're like, okay, what kind of cuisine do you want? Do you want Italian? Do you want some nasi lemak or do you want some, So then you got food and then you have different cuisines, right? And it's what you feel like. I guess that's kind of... So cryptocurrency has a fairly narrow scope. One that I've heard in the earlier days is crypto assets. And these days, the regulators don't like the word crypto in it at all, so they call it digital assets. So effectively, I think they're all the same, right?
Right, that's where our fund, we call it the digital assets tracker, right? So not crypto tracker or anything,
yeah. So I guess we're still trying to define, right? So this is a new concept. It is something new that's been introduced to the world. Well, it's not new because it's been around Bitcoin's been around since 2009, but effectively, it is a disruptive technology as well. If you think about it, what is a disruptive technology? Look, throughout mankind, we've lived through many, many disruptive technologies, and that usually changes the trajectory of our lifestyle as humans, right? Like we mentioned, when we went from horse and carriage, right, to the car. Can you imagine how useless the car was in the days of the horse and carriage? We probably didn't even have had tarred roads, right? No tarred roads, no traffic lights, and I'm sure as hell they didn't have seat belts for cars, right? But they always have to make reference to the current technology, which is horse and carriage. So for all of you who are car enthusiasts out there, how do you measure the power of the car? What metric of measure do you use to measure the power output of a car? Anyone wanna add? Any car enthusiasts
How
out
do
there?
you measure the power output of a car?
Yes. What's the metric to measure the power of a car? What do you call it?
Thank you, Rosman.
Rosman, you got it. Correct.
Horsepower.
Horsepower. Right? So the disruptive technology always needs to make some sort of reference to the existing framework that people are used to, right? That society is used to. So today we're used to banks, we're used to, fiat money currencies, we're used to gold. And so Bitcoin is like this car, right? It looks like it's got no usage because it is the future and it belongs in the future. It's a disruptive technology to the current way of life. And it is, but because you want the people to accept it today, we need to make some sort of reference to what it is today. So we talk about banks, we talk about payment networks, we talk about being an asset, about being a currency, or it is all of the above, right? Because the car also gets you from A to B, but it is a very disruptive technology. So there were times when the telegraph was the only way we could transmit messages before that we had pigeons, right? We would write out little notes tied to the legs of the pigeon, and we will send out the pigeon to travel long distances to pass our messages from point A to point B.
Hopefully it gets there.
And yeah, hopefully it doesn't get eaten or what. Then we had the telegraph, right? So the telegraph then took over the pigeon, and it could transmit messages across long distances. And then what other disruptive technology took over the telegraph? Alexander Graham Bell,
Telephone.
he invented the telephone, right?
Yeah.
So throughout humankind, we've always had disruptive technologies. Bitcoin is a disruptive technology. Whether you want to call it cryptocurrency, crypto assets, digital assets, we're just calling it something to give it reference to our frame of mind of what it is today, right? But it is a new class of its own. That's effectively what it is. But great on you guys who figured out horsepower. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a question by Han that asks, I know that some countries already adopt using cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin, the adoption, because you're talking about adoption play, right? So
Yeah.
how do you see Malaysia? I mean, where do we see Malaysia in adopting Bitcoin or any other crypto?
Because we've been in this space for a while and we've been following up. We travel, we speak to people, we go to other countries, and the crypto community is actually quite interesting. Actually, I must say Malaysia has been pretty forward in terms of regulation. So one thing we know about regulation, anytime there is disruptive innovation, always innovation comes first, then only laws follow, right? No one writes laws and then innovation happens, right? Like Elon now, he's flying people to the moon, or he's flying people out the space or space tourists. What's the regulation for that, right? So it's always innovation first. But Malaysia has been quite forthcoming and pretty fast. I believe in 2019, early 2019, back then our finance minister was Lim Guan Eng. He actually signed the ordinance, right, to recognize, back then it was called cryptocurrencies, or Bitcoin or digital assets under the Capital Market Services Act. Right, which is passed in Parliament, that recognizes that any digital assets is considered a security. So if you by legal terms, right, that's how you all say, is it currency? Legally, Malaysian government actually recognizes like a security, like a stock, like a bond. That's how they're recognizing it, right? Because if it was recognized as a currency, then it would be under the Banking Act, which is then regulated by Bank Negara, right? So we have been quite forefront. 2019, we're 2024 now. It's almost 5 years, and that's why we, as licensed fund managers, are allowed to deal in securities, and therefore, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and all these other digital assets are considered security. Therefore, we are able to manage it, right, as a licensed entity.
Yeah, so just want to move forward a little bit because you talk about Equity Striker. When we started a fund management business, we started off with, of course, Malaysian market because that's where we are all most familiar with. And we were discussing also at the time whether we want to do, investments for US markets or China markets or any other markets, and we decided to go for cryptocurrencies, right? So yeah, why as equities tracker, do we see that crypto is probably one of the better investment alternative among the others?
You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's so think of it this way. I'm gonna go back to my horse and carriage and car example, right? Now, can you imagine you lived in back then, right? Just when the car was being invented, right? So there's this very disruptive technology, and this disruptive technology looks like it's useless. It's got no use because currently it serves me really well. I just jump into my carriage, I get my horseman to get me from A to B, right? And there are surrounding industries that are built around this horse and carriage industry, right? They build the wooden wheels, they do the horse saddles and the straps, and maybe stables for the horse and horse feed, and everything else, right? So you got all these technologies and all these industries and all these businesses that have been built around this industry, or the horse and carriage industry. Then you've got this really useless looking thing called a car. The metric for measuring power is called horsepower. And there are no horses inside this car, right? But it spawns, right, a brand new industry, right? So you will now get new businesses, tire manufacturers, right? Maybe rubber tapping, right? You'll have to you need rubber to build the tires. So you got new industries that are now spawned to support this new industry. So going back to the question of value, right? Is that
No. The question is why are we offering digital assets
Digital
fund?
assets fund,
well, because we see this brand new industry that is popping up and is growing fast, and we see that as a disruptive technology, one that will. And if you've looked at disruptive technologies in the past, it overtakes, right? It starts slow, and then it becomes the norm. It usually requires a generation, right, in order for that to take effect. So if you think about it, the internet came to Malaysia in 1993, 1994, right? We are now 2024. How many years is that? 30 years on, yeah? It's about 30 years,
Yep.
right? And so just over a generation. And things are very different today, right? Back then, no way would you key in your Visa card details onto your desktop computer to buy some socks, right? No way would you be doing a lot of things that we're doing today, right? We could be sitting on the train and we are watching YouTube, or you guys might be stuck in traffic and you're watching this through your smartphone, which goes through the 5G or 4G network that is transmitting this live over the internet, right? So this was not possible. So we're offering this because we see this as a disruptive technology that is growing, and it will change society as we know it, and things will grow, and therefore it is right. It's a very nascent industry right now, but we also, because Alvin mentioned that we've been in this space for a while. We know a lot of people in here, in this industry, and we see a lot of very brilliant minds jumping into this brand new industry. These are like some of the smartest people you will speak to and you will meet. And they're all abandoning their day jobs and they're jumping into this industry. The last time I saw this happen was during the dot-com boom, and Silicon Valley became Silicon Valley, right? There was no Silicon Valley before that. All the smartest minds were jumping to get jobs in this new booming internet industry. So I see the same thing happening today. Yeah.
I think for let me see let the zoom out. Okay. Faiz? Okay, thanks. Look, I think for us, there are major cycles for investments, right? And if you look at maybe the last 100 years, if you had invested in land or property, you would have made money, right? But back then, it was those who had access to capital, which mean that you were friendly with the banking manager who will give you a loan to buy that land, and you made a lot of money, right? Then you kind of came to the next wave, right? If we talk about most recent, the last 25 years, if you were a VC, right, in the 90s or the early 2000s, and you had bought some of the big names that we know today, your Amazon, your all that, right? Amazon, your Nvidia, and so on and so forth, you would have made a bucket load of money, right? There are very few times in history where you see very big trends, right? But sometimes it's very hard to access. Very hard for access. Like, I can't go and buy all the land, right? I don't have the connections to go into the right people to see them and VC and invest in them and make multiple access, right? Hundreds, 200 access, right? But I think, and sometimes when we find major trends, they are so fragmented. So it's very hard to invest because, it's very highly competitive. But I think there's been a very, for me, in my lifetime, I look at crypto today as something that is absolutely accessible. It is not fragmented to a point where people who get in can actually make a lot of money, right? Like really, if you look at, I know someone asked just now is, will Bitcoin hit 100,000?
We'll come into that after this.
Oh, we'll come to that later.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll come to that.
But it to me, it's a very long cycle. It's a good 20, 30 year cycle. And I think it's one where we can provide access. Now, of course, you just like, you can't simply invest in any company. You cannot simply buy any land. You're not going to make money, right? There needs to be some due diligence, some work behind it, some monitoring that allows you to do that. So that's why we're offering this product, because, it's really, we see it as an opportunity that we can provide our clients, right, access to and give them peace of mind. They don't, like I say, Bitcoin secure is secure, but most of the time, people lose Bitcoin because, their phone gets hacked or their account gets hacked, right? So we give them that peace of mind, right? That's the whole idea.
Yeah. So talking about the digital assets tracker that we have for our clients, where we manage digital assets. That's why we named our service, right? So what's the difference, right? Like if I'm gonna invest in myself, buying those, whether Bitcoin or other coins myself, then investing in digital assets tracker.
Maybe if I take that, I think you see, I think any investment portfolio, we've all been sold that let's be passive. Passive investment works.
Just buy and hold.
Yeah, buy and hold, right? At Equities Tracker, we teach investing. We teach investing, and we are investors ourselves. We are licensed fund managers ourselves. The world is so dynamic. There are literally millions of variables out to play, right? And the world has become a little bit more complex now, right? A little bit more complex, a little bit less predictable. Therefore, buy and hold, forget, and just close your eyes. We don't think that's kind of the right way to do it, because it's just like nurturing a plant, right? You still got to water, cut its leaves, and then grow it, right? So you need a gardener to look after that plant. So I think with kind of that analogy, if you do it yourself, you can, right? But I know most people are actually busy, like, I forgot this, I forgot that, right?
And that's why people lost their wallet address as well.
Yeah,
sometimes.
correct. So we kind of give them the peace of mind. You have an account, right? Don't worry about it. You just come to us, and then we'll sort everything out.
So so we have the difference of course, actively managing instead of just buying and hold and leave it passive. You get that safety in mind as well. Any other thing that could benefit investors who might want to invest in crypto, whether they want to do it themselves or whether they want to go into digital assets tracker.
And of course, timeline, skill, right? I mean, I don't know. Anyone here fix your own cars?
I don't dare lah, except for fixing tires lah.
Right. So if you don't fix your own car, I mean, that's the question whether you really want to manage your own portfolio or not. Especially in a space that is quite new and is changing quite fast. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys, if you are interested to know about digital assets tracker, what you can do is just type number 8 on the chat so that we can get in touch with you lah. All right, so it's just basically giving you more information and provide you the information that you need, because we are not here today to talk about the digital assets tracker, but we want to discuss about what's happening in the crypto market now. We're going to move one step further, because right now we know that Bitcoin has reached a historical high or all-time high, like ATH, like what you guys call it, right? And I think there's this questions about, it's already high. And the last time when we had a high was about a few years ago when it was like 60, 70,000. Oh, high already. And the previous high that I can remember was at 20,000, right? And then it went to a winter. So the question right now, like, historical high. I think a lot of people ask the question, this burning question, can still invest?
Is it too late? Too late. Yeah. Andrew, you want to go first?
Maybe instead of saying whether you can or cannot, I can share with you some stats, which I mentioned earlier. There are 8 billion people in this world. 5.5 billion of these 8 billion people have access to the internet. Of this 5.5 billion people, roughly 100 to 150 million out of the 5.5 billion people have Bitcoin or have access to Bitcoin or have purchased Bitcoin. So what if it goes from 100 million to 200 million to 300 million to 400 or 500 million? That's still below a billion, right? So a billion out of 5.5 billion is still less than 20%. So I think once we hit that 10% threshold, there's no looking back, right? Once that adoption goes past 10% of the total internet population, I think there's no going back. So can you still get into Bitcoin? Critical mass, yeah. So I think I think
not financial advice, right?
Yeah. Obviously, none of this is financial advice. I'm just sharing with you the numbers. So have we reached 10%? No, we haven't. We haven't reached 10% yet. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I'll give you another perspective. This is my view. Andrew and I were just talking just now over dinner. Yeah, recently of late, we've been getting a lot of people that we haven't spoken to in ages messaging us. They'll be like, "Hey, bro, how are you?" Guarantee sure ask me about some crypto question. I guarantee. Hey, is it all-time high? Hey, you think it can still go in, all right? And you know, we always have an inside joke. We're saying, you just watch, right? There's going to be a ton of new crypto Facebook gurus that's going to be popping up on YouTube and your Facebook and your social media, because in a bull market, any strategy works, right? You sure make money, right? You get a lot of crypto gurus. But let me give you a different perspective about price. Yeah. So yes, now we're at all-time high, okay? At no point in the last 10 years, even if you had bought at the peak, you would have lost money today. Bitcoin. No one has lost money today if you have bought anything in the last 10 years, right? Because the trajectory has been upward, right? Now, why it's upward? You go read the white paper and you can understand that it's a supply and a demand and adoption play. We know that supply is limited, and if the adoption play keeps going up, there's only one-way movement for Bitcoin, right? The second reason why you should, if you're asking, 93K, should I wait? What's the next entry level? Or what should I go in at? I think you need to ask yourself, what is your time horizon? If you say, look, I'm here to speculate and to gamble, then, you would use different tool sets to determine whether, it's a right price because you're speculating. But if you're truly an investor and you believe this is a game changer and this is a paradigm shift in the investment landscape, and you're long-term enough, you say you're 5 years, 10 years, then, and you understand how it works, then really it comes back to my first question again, at no point in time in the last 10 years or since the start of Bitcoin, that even if you bought it at the peak, I remember when I went in second time again, $1,000, it was at the peak. At the peak, people thought it was crazy, right, to go into Bitcoin at $1,000, right? That you would have lost money. And if we're having this same conversation, my bet is this, right? In the next 5 years, if I get asked the same question, and we're now at all-time high, I can put my dollar to it, right? That in 5 years' time, I'll give you the same answer that if you bought at the peak in the last 15 years, no one would have lost money, right? Because that is the game theory, and that is what Bitcoin has served is supposed to serve, right? It's really a one-way street only. If you understand that formula, how it works. So if adoption keeps going up, Trump wins, Bitcoin Act, G7 countries put it as strategic reserves, they buy 5% of Bitcoin, that's just great demand, limited supply, that's it.
Actually, you mentioned the strategic reserve that Trump mentioned. Remember, Alvin, when we were talking about this in 2017, we said that one day central banks will have Bitcoin as what do you call it? A reserve currency, right? Or a strategic reserve. It's playing out today, right? And back then, we used to be ridiculed by a lot of the people in the finance industry. I think we will still get ridiculed by them. But it's interesting because now the most powerful economy in the world is actually putting, I think they committed to 1 million Bitcoin into their strategic reserve. And what's interesting is that now there are 200 over countries in this world, right? So how many other central banks and how many other countries are going to put some Bitcoin into their strategic reserve? I'll share something interesting, something trivial but interesting. Bhutan, the Kingdom of Bhutan, where they have a happiness index, right? They have been quietly mining Bitcoin in the last few years, and they are now 4th in the world. So Bhutan's a tiny country, tiny nation. They are now 4th in the world of having Bitcoin in their strategic reserves, right? The first being America, second being China, third being Germany, and the 4th is the Kingdom of Bhutan, right? Of course, you have El Salvador. That was the first one that put Bitcoin into their reserves. So how many other countries out there, or how many other central bankers out there are thinking about, America's doing it, should we do it too?
Yeah.
Right? So yeah.
I think once US is the largest economy in the world today, and they are the reserve currency of the world. 70-80% of all global trade is done in USD. If they recognize Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset, I don't think the other 195 countries have a choice. So that only increases that demand, right? And we already know it's a formula, right? It's not there's no CEO at Bitcoin that's gonna now got more demand, let's produce more. It doesn't work that way, right? It's software. So I think
yeah, so that's the reason why I think we started Digital Assets Tracker as well, right? Because we started educating, we started training people on cryptocurrencies, and we are of course believers, right? That one day, and that time I still remember, market was going down from the 70,000 peak, and we were conducting that class, right?
Yeah.
And we actually taught the strategies, which is what we are doing in our Digital Assets Tracker today. But out of the probably more than 100 students that we teach, only probably 2 or 3, or maybe, I don't know, 1 or 2% actually applied and be happier about it. But the rest of them don't. So why is that so, right? Yes, I know about crypto, but why I can't do it myself?
I think it's okay. Crypto is quite for the non-tech, or if you're not very good with technology, it's not that easy, honestly, right? And that's why the very early adopters were all the tech people, because they understood it, right? Even for me, right, I'm nervous, right? Whenever I send an address, I always, a 0 or an O can look very similar, So even that small thing, I can literally lose everything, right? So I think that's put off a lot of people, because it's before the iPhone was invented, or you get WhatsApp and you can stream videos, and Apple's really made it so easy for an everyday person to use, get access to the internet and enjoy it. Before that, it was so clunky. You use modem, we dial in, you use the phone line. It's just a bit clunky. So I think things are still a little bit clunky today. And if you don't want to mess with all the little details, and if I make a mistake, who do I call? I got no one to call, right? I know a lot of our students call us because they come in, hey, my wallet, how the LCD screen died already, you know, what do I do, right? So there's a lot of work, right? There's a lot of work behind it. You can actually do it, but you need to make sure you have time to do it, right? And of course, the skill, the expertise, you know, we have a team of people doing this, right? So, yeah.
Oh, you just got an update from one of our audience. BTC at ATH again.
Yay.
94,300.
94,300.
Yeah, guys, I mean, again, we cannot explain much about the digital assets tracker today because we want to continue some of the still few points that we want to discuss. But if you guys are interested, like the others, just type 8 on the chat, then we'll get in touch with you if you want to know more about how we can manage your cryptocurrencies. All right? Okay, so, yeah, there was a question earlier. I think, Andrew mentioning that 10%. So there was a question, why 10%?
Why 10%? Okay, look, 10% of 5.5 billion is 550 million people. I think that's quite substantial. If 550 million people on this planet would accept internet, I guess it also represents the it's that that threshold. Because right now there's just under 2% of people who have, I mean, this is a rough estimate based on what our research, but less than, so right now 100 to 150 million is roughly just under 2% of all internet users who have access, and it's at 94,300. What's going to happen at 550 million people? What price is that going to be? Look, again, it's all speculation at this point, but the constant remains that there is limited supply. So if there's limited supply and demand continues to grow, what happens to price? Yeah, I'll leave you with that.
I think also, one thing I talk about, it's long term, right? Because we want to participate in this adoption play. That's really the point. I think how much you invest, it's also important as well, right? We're not saying, hey, put 100 and go and borrow money and do this. That's not what we're trying to say. We're saying that you should at least have an allocation because it is an adoption play, right? Say you do 5 or 10%. Say if you're wrong, right? But I think as time goes by, I think the chances of us being wrong right now is lower and lower, right? So if you have a long enough time frame, you will ride out the winters for sure. You will definitely ride out the winters, right? If you are only exposed 5% into digital assets, and say it drops by half, your whole portfolio is affected by only 2.5%. So I think these are the two very important factors that you need, right, to take into account, because there was a recent one, right? I think Franklin Templeton, right, or in US pension funds are now allocating Bitcoin, and I guess it's my long-term bet, at some point all Malaysians are going to have Bitcoin regardless whether they like it or not, because EPF is going to start buying it as well, right? It will take them longer, but it is most likely going to happen, right?
Well, in US, the recent ones was the state of Pennsylvania.
State of Pennsylvania,
yeah,
right?
they were
Teachers
gonna,
fund, right?
Something like that. They were going to allocate 7 billion or something like that into digital assets, of which 10% of that will go into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the US has 50 states.
Yeah, I still remember when we approached Securities Commission or SC many years ago. They don't even want to hear the word cryptocurrencies, right? You remember?
A bad word. No,
it's a bad word. It's a taboo. But right now, see, look who's talking, right? And you can see like today also there are a lot of even big investment banks are going, having ETFs on crypto, which earlier they do not believe on, but now they are starting to. And now you're talking about countries. So that Trump factor, right? Yeah. The moment Trump won the election, I remember Bitcoin prices and all the crypto went up like crazy. Yeah. But why? Why is that Trump factor? Why is Trump so powerful?
Well, his election promises are against whether you trust politicians, that's another story. But I think he's got a lot riding on him because one of his donors, right? His donors. If you look at his donor list, I think 1/3 of them were crypto guys. who donated to his campaign.
Yeah.
So he better keep his promise. So it's because it's an adoption play, it's acceptability. If US does pass the Bitcoin Act recognizing it, it's going to be very, very significant because you're the world's largest economy. They are already reserve currency, so all central banks hold US dollars as a reserve currency, and they are the US dollar being the most widely currency that for trading, right? And if they adopt it, and Andrew was talking about Bhutan, right? Just to give you an idea how much Bitcoin they've accumulated, it's equivalent to 25 to 30% of their annual GDP. That's how much they've accumulated, right? Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's very significant, right? Okay,
Yeah, I guess one of the things that normally investors look at, or even traders is the price, right? We all know that now that Bitcoin is already at 94,000 US dollars, and if you were investors, we always look at share price and we're thinking, hey, any company share price is 94,000 US dollars now. It must be damn expensive, it must be very high already, right? But then you explain about how big, let's say, Bitcoin is against, let's say, the equity market in the US.
It's a drop in the ocean.
Still drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
Right?
What's the size of Bitcoin today?
I think it's 1.3 or 1.4 trillion market cap of Bitcoin.
So that's not even near Apple, isn't it?
Apple's 2 trillion, I think.
Apple's 2 trillion.
I think Nvidia's higher.
And that's only one share, one company in the US, right? Out of
so it's actually very small if you to give it perspective.
Yeah.
And also I think because we are so used to $1 of the concept, right? So we all think that we need to buy one Bitcoin, but it's actually been fractionalized, right? So the point that you can buy 0.70 and 1 Bitcoin, so you can always buy a fraction of Bitcoin. That's why it's so accessible today, right? And that was really how it was built. It was by design, right?
Yeah. And I still remember the time was when you got me introduced into crypto, I used to trade palm oil futures, right? And because that time I think crypto wasn't ready for futures trading and that kind of stuff. But when it was ready, it's like, I think that's it, man. I'm gonna go crypto full time and trading. But again, this is not advice for you to guys go trading, right? Unless you have years of experience in trading, But that being said, when I was promoting crypto to my friend, Bitcoin I think you know that guy also, Sinjin.
Okay.
Don't know whether it's online or not, but he was buying Bitcoin at about 60,000 US dollars, right? And the price came down, and of course, they asked me, hey Benny, you look at this, what happened? You asked me to go and buy this, right? But I told him, hey, you know what? If you're looking at long term, like you said, it's a long term play. I just asked him to buy some more, right? Okay. And of course, he didn't buy because we're always afraid, right, when prices go down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And because it's so volatile as well. Right? So, like, I think there's one question earlier they asked, how do you manage the volatility?
Yes. Yeah. You want to talk about it? You can take that.
Yeah. Look, I know we've been talking about Bitcoin all night, but then when it comes to an investment portfolio, if you were to only buy Bitcoin, then 100% of your risk is on that one asset in that portfolio. So in investment portfolios, we talk about not so much diversification, right? But in a sense, you want to manage your risk. So digital assets, right, or crypto assets, by and large, we see as disruptive technologies, and we see as a growing industry, and hence, whilst it's growing, Bitcoin may go up and others may go down, but then when Bitcoin takes a break, the others may shoot up, right? So that's effectively the market. So when you try to obviously you don't just have one asset in that portfolio. You want to have, some assets in the portfolio to sort of de-risk
volatility.
The volatility and also using I suppose the methodology that we've that we've back tested in house to reduce that volatility. Like I think,
And that's something we teach in our classes anyway,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We
that's
just
right.
apply it for you, right?
yeah,
So it's kind of, the ET methodology, we call it laddering, or, spreading out your bets. You never, if you have $100, you never ever go $100 at one price, because that's risky, right? So one of the things that we do is we split it up in chunks, and we do it over a period of time. So I think that is a very important thing to do. So you have an asset class that's very volatile. How do you make it less volatile? So one is diversification, creation of a portfolio. That means not just buying one. Number two is spreading out your capital over a period of time.
your capital allocation.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you won't get the highest maximum return, because highest maximum return means you buy everything at the lowest price and sell at the highest price. No such thing, right? I think we're all matured enough to realize that there's no such thing in life, okay? But you would, if based on our strategy, if Bitcoin drops 75%, our portfolio only dropped 15, because we've employed these techniques built in, right? Now, of course, if Bitcoin goes all the way from the bottom to top, of course you get great return, right? So we won't get the peak return, but you will still get something more than if you had not done that, right? So it's kind of we know most people cannot, generally can't take volatility, and we are very careful with that, right? As a licensed fund manager, because this is a product that or strategy that we explain, right? And you must understand, but we know as much as we explain. Sometimes when market is down 5-10%, people get a bit panic. So it's kind of be built into that lah.
Yeah, people get quite emotional when it goes up or when it comes down.
Yeah.
So we try to take that emotional element out of it by deploying this strategy that Alvin mentioned, which is, and we also take a longer view. When you take a longer view, it all works out. So the volatility actually decreases.
Yeah, I think the emotional part play a very important aspect, because I know we have been teaching, right, to create at least get Bitcoin, right, or at least build a portfolio of a few coins and then you manage it, right. But what I did was I tried to be smart, right, and find the cheaper alternative, because traders like cheap, right? Investors like cheap, and I was looking at Litecoin, right. So, but instead of buying Bitcoin and other coins, I just do the savings on Litecoin lah. Now I'm not complaining, because it's still making money right now, but could have done better lah, right? So despite yes, we have that strategy and all that, but personally hard to follow.
Right.
Is that a common thing among investors and traders? Yeah, you teach them whatever they need to know, but hard to follow lah.
You can be the most seasoned trader around, but all I can say is that you are only human, right? So you will feel certain emotions when it goes up and comes down sharply, and I think obviously I'm trying to train my kids to feel nothing, but it's just like as with. Okay, so I practiced martial arts for many years, right? One of the thing about when you go in for sparring, the first time you'll feel very excited. Your heart pumps a million times a minute, and you get very nervous and you're overly reactive. But a seasoned martial artist, you will see that they will control the breathing. They try to maintain calm and just react to whatever's happening. So similar to martial arts, I think if you're doing that trading thing, you have to try to feel nothing and just execute as planned, which is a very difficult thing to do, by the way.
I mean, today Bitcoin being at 94,000, I cannot feel nothing. When I walk, the strides are a bit longer. There's a hop in my jump, right? My step, right? You wake up always wake up on the right side of the bed, whichever side that you're on, right?
Yeah, I guess that's the beauty of having a managed fund by because when we do the digital asset tracker, or in fact any fund management that we do, it has to be based on data, information, right?
Yeah.
And of course, investing own personal money is more emotional. But when you invest other people's money, we have to make sure, number one, they don't lose money.
Yeah.
Okay. But the good thing is we're not emotional about it, right? It's all data driven, and that's how, and that's why we are able to start that digital assets, or even our snowball for equities lah. So again, guys, if you're really interested in that digital assets tracker, just type number 8. I want to thank you guys for typing number 8 in there. We'll get in touch with you as soon as possible lah. Right? So I guess right now you basically know what our stand is, including my stand, because this, whatever, when I need advice, I'll probably just go to Andrew lah. Okay, because he's connected to the crypto world. He knows a lot of people, right? For me, I'm just a trader, right? I make small profits here and there, but in fact, and that's the reason why even for my children, right? I've already asked them to put some money into crypto as well, like whatever ang pao money that they have, again lah. Litecoin lah, should have put Bitcoin lah, but Litecoin lah. So they were complaining now.
You know the interesting thing is, right? So Andrew gives my kids ang pao every year.
Yeah.
Well, not just for birthdays,
Birthday,
Chinese New Year,
and we have this wallet for them. It's actually all the kids, and he gives it all in crypto, right? It's quite nice to see going up, lah. So I guess it's you can start small, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because there was question earlier, because given the scarcity of Bitcoin, would most people be able to own some form of Bitcoin in the future?
You have to. Every journey starts with a step.
So what? A 1,000-mile journey starts with a single step, right?
Yeah.
Well, because you don't have to buy one Bitcoin, you can buy 0.1234567 one Satoshi, they call it, right? So because it's fractionalized, so you don't actually need to buy one Bitcoin lah. But yeah, so I mean, historically, the later you buy, the more expensive it gets. That's all I can tell you.
But it just get more expensive, right? Because like you mentioned earlier that it's still a drop in the ocean as compared to the capital markets that we have today.
Small, right? Small.
I mean, just to give maybe a local experience, right? Whether think of the 1700s, right, or the 1800s, or even just the recent 1900s. Kuala Lumpur, right, KL. It was just mud, pretty much. Kuala Lumpur, right? Lumpur is mud, and the population wasn't that high. It was quite a low population. Infrastructure wasn't developed so well, right? Less roads. But what happened over time? More and more people came in. So remember, I said less than 2% of people are on Bitcoin right now. So more and more people came to KL. Infrastructure got built, right? Better roads got built. High towers and high buildings were built. And the price of property in KL now is a lot more expensive than it was.
You pay more. The later you join, the more you pay, right?
Yeah. Right. So, yeah.
Okay, so what we're gonna do now, it's already 9:30. We're just gonna take a look at your questions, all right? I think whatever direction that we have gone through in this conversation, we have already completed, right? There's still a lot of room. Number one, we won't be able to give any forecast, right? We can't lah, right? Sorry to say, but in the long term, definitely there'll be more growth, right? That's what we see lah. So you guys, if you haven't really got into crypto, maybe like Alvin mentioned earlier, you don't need to put all your money in, right? 5% or 10% of whatever you have first, because when, let's say, anything goes south, you lose that 5 or 10% only, right? But the potential, if it goes up 100%, for example, that contributes 10% to your portfolio. So you should have that. Like, again, if you need to know more about this, you just type in number 8 and we'll get in touch with you. Yeah. So we're gonna take a look at questions from you guys. So if you have any more questions, we're gonna open for another 15 minutes for you guys to ask any questions before we end this session. Yeah. I'm going to take some of the questions earlier that are being asked. If I've missed out your question, can you just please type in again so that we bring the question up again? There was a question much earlier that asked, maybe one of you can accept, can business in Malaysia accept crypto as a payment from my customers? It's a kind of barter, right?
Yeah, so maybe to answer that question, I guess in Malaysia, the legal tender is Ringgit Malaysia.
Ringgit Malaysia.
So the technical term here is legal tender. Obviously, we also live very much in a gig economy these days. So when I got into crypto, I remember meeting a friend. So I'll just share a story. I was living in Melbourne then. I met this guy at one of the crypto meetups. He was a British guy on a tourist visa. He worked for a crypto company based out in Silicon Valley, and how he got paid was through Ethereum, ETH, and what he would do is whenever he needed cash to pay for rent and food and all that, he would just go to one of these meetups and exchange some ETH for cash. And to me, that blew my mind. This was early 2016, 2015. I think it was about 2015. And I remember meeting this guy, and I was very blown away by his lifestyle. I mean, he was a young guy traveling the world, and he was in Melbourne because his girlfriend happened to be Australian, and she was in Melbourne, so he followed her back to Melbourne. And so here he was, digital nomads today are quite a common thing, but he was getting paid in ETH, and he could go anywhere around the world, go to a meetup, exchange some of it for the local currency to spend on food and everything else. So, can you do that? I'm probably not in a position to give you legal advice, but the legal tender here is Ringgit Malaysia. But I suppose if you check in with your accountant and you book it correctly, right, then you probably could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Bitcoin or digital assets are now recognized. Very quick story. Back in 2019, where we got listed on Bursa Malaysia, we had Bitcoin on our balance sheet, and back then the accountants did not know how to recognize it. Is it an intangible asset, or ask me how do you get prices and all. So we said, never mind, we take it out. The answer, take it out of your balance sheet, then you list it clean, right? Okay, because they didn't understand. And back then there was also no financial reporting standards on digital assets. Today they have. So to extend on what Andrew has said, you should check with your accountant, because there are FRS standards right now on how you would recognize it on your balance sheet.
Okay, thank you for the question and thanks for the answers. There's a question here. For long-term investment, is it better to invest in crypto fund or ETF, or DCA invest into BTC or alternate coins?
So what's the question again?
Better to invest in the fund or ETF, or invest it directly into ET or altcoins?
I mean, right now, ETFs itself, if you talk about Bitcoin ETFs, I think there's only a Bitcoin ETF. It's an ETH ETF.
Yep.
And that's it.
And potentially a Litecoin ETF.
Maybe akan datang lah, right?
Yeah.
So when you buy this ETF, you're not buying a basket, you're not buying a portfolio. So essentially, it is almost, it's a representation of Bitcoin. So you can, whether you buy Bitcoin directly or you buy the Bitcoin BTC ETF, it's more or less the same, but with less fees lah. As long with regards to a fund, someone just asked, I think, Halogen and us we are both licensed fund managers. I think we are the only two fund managers in Malaysia that are doing digital assets, right? That are, we're all licensed to do it, but a lot of the other larger asset management firms don't have the know-how or knowledge on how to actually launch that product. Yeah. So we are one of two lah. So I think just to share. So really, whether you invest in a fund, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there are no funds. There are very few funds that are invested in crypto. The ETFs that you're looking at is actually buying Bitcoin or buying Ethereum, so it's not really a portfolio lah. So in a way, I won't consider it a fund. Like when I say fund, I mean a portfolio lah, right? So the only way now is you want to create your own portfolio. It's you do it yourself, monitor it yourself, buy and sell. Wake up at 3 a.m. if you need to sell, right? Because crypto markets is 24/7. It doesn't rest, right? So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so again, we will want to explain to you more about what the difference are in our digital assets tracker actively managed fund as compared to Halogen. Yeah. What's our view on Halogen? I mean, they are also a licensed fund manager, like Elvin mentioned. We are just both of them. But of course, you want to ask us what's my view, then of course I say we are better lah. But again, that's not the point. But they have their pros and cons. It's a different product lah, I guess. It's really different lah. Yeah. That's what we can say lah. Okay, next question.
Also going to be akan datang syarat compliant as well.
Oh
Yeah,
we are,
Sharia
it's
compliant.
going to be Sharia compliant
Yes,
for
yes.
those our Muslim friends out there. We are in the process of getting the mandates Sharia compliant lah.
Should be pretty soon,
Yeah, pretty soon. Okay, Alvin is asking, what are the fundamentals to look at when choosing a coin? Because it's not like stocks, right? You have all the financial figures.
Yeah. Actually, thanks for the question. That's actually a very good question. Yes, the first thing to do is recognize that it is not a stock, therefore it's not a company. You are using different metrics to measure it. And again, we fall back on the philosophy. We employ the philosophy of value in investing, right? So when you look at Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin being one of them, we mentioned that it can be viewed. It can be viewed from many angles, right? It can be a store of value, it can be a payment network, it can be a bank, right? We're talking about network value as well. So
Okay.
and again, I'm going back to the horse and carriage and the car thing, right? It's very difficult to define it, but you look at the trends that are currently happening, and what utility or purpose this serves, and so as mentioned about Bitcoin, from all those perspectives, that's what it would serve, right? Those are the potential ways to value it, right? Then you look at Ethereum or something like Solana, right? Then you're like, okay, well, so Ethereum is the second largest market cap of crypto. So how do we look at that? Now, obviously, you won't look at it like Bitcoin because it's not Bitcoin. It's not what Bitcoin does. But it does serve another purpose, and it does something differently, right? It serves as a platform. You can think of it. So I'm trying to bring it back to the current sort of framework. Think of it as, say, the Google Play Store, right? So if you think of Ethereum as the Google Play Store, and any developers can write apps, your mobile apps, onto the Google Play Store, and then the developers themselves, it can be a free app, or you can monetize your apps. Effectively, it's that platform, right? Now you've probably heard of the term Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. So Ethereum becomes that Web 3 layer, that platform. Again, think of it like the Google Play Store. Then you're like, okay, well, what about Solana? So Solana, think of it like the Apple App Store, right? It's a competitor to Ethereum, but one is more centralized, one is more decentralized. So it's quite diverse if you think about it, right? So different coins will have different utilities, and it solves different problems. So you need to find what problem it solves. Now, you have probably seen a lot of meme coins that's been like having, tens of thousands of %, right? It's been pumping. Meme coins like Mudang and Peanut and all the Pepe, Whiff, right? The dog we've had, all these ones. So you got to ask yourself, well, what problem does that solve? Boredom, maybe, right? It might solve boredom. You're bored, but also maybe loneliness, because you're always isolated. You're only in front of a computer, and therefore you want to feel like you're part of something, because we're only human. And that's probably, I'm actually not kidding, right? So we were in one of the largest crypto conferences in Singapore this year, called Token 2049, and there was a guy on the stage. His name was Murad, and he talks about how why meme coins are getting so much traction. I guess what he says is because they found a way to effectively monetize culture, or as I see it, maybe sentiment, right? So when you feel excited about something and you want to be part of something, you want to be part of that movement, you go and buy the coin, I guess, right? But yeah, so I guess every single coin, you got to look at its utility. What does it solve? Is it short term? Is it medium term? Or is there a long term focus on it? And is that going to rise? So that's somewhere to start.
I mean, to add to that as well, I think also depending on what kind of tokens that we're looking at, we talk about adoption play, things like daily active addresses is something that we look at because you can actually, because the blockchain is so transparent, right? So you actually can see, are there more users using it? More wallets created? Is there more transactions that's happening? I mean, not limited to, but just to give an example of, things we look at.
Yeah, so I guess there's quite a demand for different kind of coins, like even though meme coins, right? I still remember last year when I got into Pudgy Penguins. Penguins.
Penguin.
NFTs.
Yeah, one of the things because of that community, I saw that they were so involved. I just want to be part of them. That they have done a lot of things to the community. But of course, when the price showed up, I exited being a trader. But yeah, so there's one question about Dogecoin, right? Is it part of a meme coin movement as well? Why do people buy Dogecoin?
Doge was actually the original meme coin. It was the OG,
The
right?
OG.
Yes.
The author of Doge did it as a joke.
Yes. It was a joke coin, right? Essentially.
Yeah, it was a joke, and so we speak about this right now. Let's not forget. Now the internet took. From when I started getting online, which was 1993, 1994 to now, it's been 30 years, right? And in that 30 years, attitudes have changed, our lifestyles have changed, our views on doing certain things today have changed. Like you ask a young person, what do you want to be? I want to be an influencer. I want to be a YouTuber. You think that you'd be mad, right, if you tried to be that 30 years ago. But today that's a norm. So this meme coin thing, right? We might think it's stupid, it's silly, but who knows? I mean, culture is changing, and the youth are adapting to their current environment. So meme coin could be here to stay. You never know.
I want to be a meme coin, right?
I mean, things have changed definitely over the past even 1 decade. Things have moved a lot, right? So guys, if you have any more questions, you can just type it in. I think we have answered most of the questions. If I've missed them out, can you just type in the questions again? Because if there's no questions, we'll end the session. And we hope to have these sessions more often as well to give you guys updated as well. And like iPad, I'm sure that's not your name, but if you guys are interested to know more about our digital assets tracker strategy, then just type number 8 and we'll get in touch with you. All right. So in the meantime, any more questions? Because if we don't see any more questions, then we can wrap this up already. Okay. But before you ask the questions, maybe just want to ask Andrew and Alvin, like how you convince people, or even convince me on investing into cryptocurrencies. What would your one message be for those who have not gone into cryptocurrencies?
Even if you completely disagree with me on everything I've said, and you feel that you're right, don't you want to hedge yourself against that? What if I'm right? Right? If I'm talking to someone, 2% or 3% of your portfolio is not going to hurt you, but if I'm right, you're gonna be a big winner, even if you don't believe me, right? Or you don't believe it, or you don't understand it yet, right? So, it's the question is it something hedging it, right? About being right or wrong, right?
Yeah. For me, it's funny these days. I don't really try to convince anyone anymore. After a while, you get a lot of but it's this, but it's that, So these days I don't. I was like, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, and you just quietly do what you do, right? Because
but I think we're here to educate.
Yes,
so,
we are. Yeah.
So if there are genuine questions,
yes, yeah. I mean, obviously, if they're asking very good questions like you guys are, like in the audience, and you can tell we're very open to share our stories and our views and all that. I obviously will share, but if I meet someone and I tell them about it and they tell me everything that it's not, I'll just agree with them. I'll say, good one. But really, I think I personally feel that because I've always been an early adopter in technology. and my underlying background is computer science. So when I see certain technologies, I kind of see what the future could potentially look like. And the other time that I felt this way about a technology, in my lifetime, right, was when I was introduced to the internet. I was a teenager, and I was figuring out how to use Linux. I built, I put together a Linux computer. I installed Slackware Linux, and I hit the IRC, I guess the equivalent of a WhatsApp these days. I hit an IRC channel, and I was asking for help for someone to help me install something, and someone from halfway across the world connected through the internet into my computer in my bedroom at whatever 8, 9 or 3 a.m. in the morning to help me install, and I could see exactly what they were doing, and my mind just blew. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to change the world. So the internet has changed the world, and what you see in crypto is an evolution of what the internet is, and it continues to change the world. It's going to change life as we know it today. Our lifestyles will change. Our lifestyles have already changed in the last 30 years. Right? I need socks, I go to Shopee, right? And I search for socks and I just click buy, and it all goes through, right? So imagine doing that 30 years ago. The only other time that I have been excited about disruptive technology was when I discovered the internet. The other time is now. So now we've got 30 years to see it play out. Yeah.
Yeah, if someone will ask me, I just will tell them, why not? Okay, guys, I'm gonna end this session soon, but before we leave, right, if you guys, there's one more question just came in. If you guys love this kind of session and want us to do more this kind of sessions, whether it's in cryptocurrencies or stocks or any other investments, can you just key number 1 on the chat, so that we know that, if you get response from you guys, support from you guys, we will continue to do this more. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, and remember, number 8 is for those who are interested in our digital assets tracker, yeah? Okay, last question for PC. This is from PC. How is Web 2 different from Web 3?
You want to take it?
Why we need Web 3?
Sure.
Okay, this
Sure.
one definitely for Andrew.
Yeah, okay. So the very early iteration of the internet, Web 1, was very static, right? Then Web 2 became more interactive, but think of this, right? If this was 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and I told you, hey, there's going to be this publicly listed company where all it is a website, and we get everyone to key their data in and share their photos and their videos, and it's going to make billions and billions of dollars. It's going to be one of the most highly capitalized companies. It's going to have one of the highest market cap in the world. You would have thought I had gone absolutely nuts. The company I speak of is called Meta, or previously known as Facebook. Right, that'd be nuts. So think of this: you are contributing your data, right? The photos were yours before you uploaded it onto Facebook. Right. As soon as you uploaded all that data and chats and all that onto that Facebook, they now own it.